Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The FrEEK Show. I know we mentioned in the update video last week that we will only be doing the FrEEK Show during this month, as well as Moose and I will actually be taking turns doing them. We decided on doing something a little easier this month, so we decided to do stories based around where we grew up. So this week I decided to tackle one of the most famous hitchhiking ghosts in the world, Resurrection Mary. In a southwest suburb of Chicago, Illinois, there is a cemetery called Resurrection Cemetery. It is located in the town of Justice, along Archer Avenue. Now, Archer Avenue is said to be a paranormal hotspot in general, but today we're going to be focusing on one particular specter, Resurrection Mary. The accounts from witnesses typically go like this. A man is either at a dance spot or driving down Archer Avenue when they spot a young blonde woman, either dancing at the club or walking down the street. They typically ask her if she needs a ride home. A young woman says yes, gets in, and tells them to drive down Archer Avenue towards the cemetery. Upon approaching the cemetery gates, she exclaims, "Stop here," and she gets out of the car, runs towards the gates, and disappears, leaving the driver utterly confused. The stories do vary, however. Some say that they see her dancing along the cemetery fence. Others say she will jump out in front of cars, causing the driver to think that they hit her. This was even reported to have happened to a Justice police officer who would later lose his job due to telling the story on national television. So where do these stories originate? The first documented report goes back to 1936. Jerry Palis was at O. Henry's Ballroom, which would later become the Willowbrook Ballroom, when he spotted a pretty young blonde woman standing alone who said her name was Mary. He asked her to dance, and she accepted. Jerry remembers her being cold, both in touch and in attitude. It was getting a little late, and Jerry asked Mary if she would like a ride home with him and his brother. She accepted and gave directions to drive down Archer Avenue. When they approached the gates, she asked them to stop the car. She said, "I have to leave you now. You can't follow me." And she got out of the car and headed for the gates, where she vanished into thin air, leaving Jerry and his brother bewildered. Many of the stories go like this, as I mentioned. Some stories even say that Mary gave her address to the gentleman driving her home, and after she disappeared at the cemetery, they would go to her house. When they asked if she was there, the parent that would answer would say, "No, Mary died a few years ago in a car accident." And the guy would see a picture of Mary inside the house, looking just as she had that night. Over the years, stories racked up. Men meeting a woman at a dance hall or picked up on the side of the road, just to have her vanish. Chet's Melody Lounge sits right across from Resurrection Cemetery, and is apparently the place to go when people have had encounters. During the 1970s, the cemetery was being renovated, and the sightings increased. One night in 1973, a cab driver came bursting into Chet's, demanding to know where the blonde girl was. He stated he had picked up a young lady on the side of the road, started to drive her home. She asked to stop there so that she could use the restroom. When she hadn't returned, the cab driver came in thinking she was trying to skip out on paying the fare. When the owner and the rest of the people in the bar had told him that there hadn't been anyone matching her description, he thought for sure they were trying to cover for her. The owner let the cab driver search the bar, but Mary was nowhere to be seen. This wouldn't be the last time that the bar would have people with similar stories come in confused at a disappearing girl at the cemetery, or that they thought that they had hit someone with their car, only to find nobody in sight. The bartender then tells them of Resurrection Mary. The bar even closes up with a Bloody Mary sitting at the end of the bar, in case she decides to come in. Another cab driver a few years later was driving by the cemetery late one night, and he saw a young woman in a white dress standing behind the gates, gripping the bars, crying. He rushed to the local police station a few blocks away and told them what he saw, thinking that someone had been locked in. The police immediately went to the cemetery. They found no one in the gates and even searched the cemetery, but found no one. Upon looking at the gates, however, they saw that two of the bars had been bent, and they could see imprints of what looked like hands gripping them. The cemetery removed the bars and tried to fix them, although they could not be completely fixed. The official statement from the cemetery was that the bars had been damaged by a truck backing into it. However, I used to know someone in that area that worked with fencing and gates who had personally seen them, and he doesn't know how it could happen, but it wasn't a truck. In the late summer of 2019, the bars went missing. It is unknown whether they were stolen by someone or taken by the Archdiocese. Now, I mentioned before that the stories typically happen to men. It is unknown why, but she tends to only appear to men or couples when a man is present. One woman stated that her friend had just gotten a new car, and so they decided to go out for a drive one night down Archer Avenue to Resurrection Cemetery. The two women got out of the car and looked at the damaged gates, tried calling out to Mary, they tried dancing, they even joked about giving her a ride home. Well, nothing happened, so they left. A driver dropped off her friend and went home. Her boyfriend was waiting for her, looking out the window. When his girlfriend came in, her boyfriend was confused. He asked where her friend was. She had stated that she had already dropped her off. The boyfriend asked her, "Then who was the girl that I saw staring at me from the passenger side?" He had no idea where they had been that night. So who was Resurrection Mary? While no one seems to know for sure, there are a few guesses as to who she was in life. We will be discussing the two most popular theories. The first person thought to be Resurrection Mary was a 21-year-old factory worker by the name of Mary Bergovi. Mary was said to often go dancing at O'Henry's when she was alive. It is even said that she had went there the night she died in 1934. However, Bergovi has short dark hair, not the blonde curls that Mary was said to have, and she also had been in an accident downtown and died on her way to the hospital. The other most popular theory is that of young Anna Mary Norkus. Anna was blonde and had passed away when she was coming home from O'Henry's with her family. The car had crashed into an unmarked 25-foot ditch nearby Resurrection Cemetery around 1:30 in the morning. Anna died on impact. Anna was only 12 years old though, not matching the descriptions of the young woman often described. It is worth noting, however, that when Ursula Bielski used her picture for her second edition of Chicago Haunts, she received several letters from witnesses saying that Anna was the Mary that they had seen. While the ballroom has since burned down, the sightings of Resurrection Mary still continue. It is thought that she may have had a temporary plot in the Resurrection Cemetery, and when her ghost came back from dancing one night, she discovered that her body was gone, and has been unable to find rest since. So whether or not you believe in ghosts, if you ever find yourself driving down Archer Avenue and see a young woman in white dancing alongside the road, you may want to keep driving. Unless, of course, that is, you want to have an experience with Resurrection Mary. Tune in next week, everyone, when Moose talks about the Mothman. Take care, everyone.